April 13th, 1953, a quiet research lab in the heart of Maryland. Inside a government facility, a group of men in suits gather around a table. On it lies a vial of clear liquid. They speak in hushed tones as a scientist carefully prepares a dose. Moments later, an unsuspecting man, a civilian, walks into the room. He was told he'd be participating in a simple psychological study. What he doesn't know is that his drink has been laced with LSD. Within minutes, he begins to hallucinate. His heart races. He panics. The men around him scribble notes, stone-faced, as they watch him spiral into terror. This is just one of countless secret experiments conducted under the CIA's infamous MKUltra program, a project so hidden, so extreme, that even Congress wouldn't know the full truth for decades. But why would the CIA do this? What were they hoping to achieve? And who were the other victims of these disturbing experiments? The answers to these questions reveal a chilling conspiracy, one that would push the boundaries of science, morality, and human rights to their breaking point. And the most horrifying part, the true scope of what happened might never be fully known. The year is 1953, and the United States is gripped by the paranoia of the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the US are locked in an invisible battle for supremacy, one that extends far beyond missiles and nuclear warheads. This war is being fought in the shadows, in labs and interrogation rooms, where intelligence agencies on both sides are desperate to gain the ultimate advantage, control over the human mind. It was during this tense period that CIA Director Allen Dulles approved the launch of MKUltra, a covert operation designed to explore mind control and psychological manipulation. The reasoning was as chilling as it was pragmatic. If enemy nations could break a man's will, turn him into a puppet, or extract his deepest secrets, America needed to learn how to do it first, and better. At first, the program operated under the guise of benign research. Documents described it as a scientific initiative to study the effects of drugs and hypnosis on the brain. But hidden within these sterile descriptions was something far more sinister. One of the first known participants, a man named Harold Blauer, was admitted to a New York psychiatric hospital in 1953. He thought he was being treated for depression. Instead, without his knowledge or consent, doctors injected him with high doses of an experimental drug provided by the CIA. Days later, he was dead. Blauer's death was just the beginning. Across the country, MKUltra operatives were quietly infiltrating universities, hospitals, and prisons. Under the direction of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the program's lead scientist, researchers were tasked with one goal: to uncover how far they could push the human psyche before it broke. But here's the chilling part. No one, not even the researchers themselves, fully understood the consequences of their work, and they didn't care. The CIA wanted answers, no matter the cost. How were these experiments justified? Who were the other victims, and why did no one notice what was happening for so many years? To uncover the truth, we need to dive even deeper into the twisted reality of MKUltra. As MKUltra gained momentum, its methods became more disturbing and more secretive. The program's operatives were relentless, targeting vulnerable populations who couldn't fight back. Prisoners, mental health patients, even unsuspecting civilians were pulled into the web of experimentation. In one particularly haunting case, a group of patients at a Canadian psychiatric hospital became the unwitting subjects of psychic driving, a process devised by Dr. Ewan Cameron, a leading psychiatrist. Cameron believed he could reprogram the human mind by bombarding patients with repeated audio recordings, sometimes for weeks at a time, while keeping them in a chemically induced stupor. These patients were told they were undergoing therapy. What they received instead was mental and emotional devastation. Many would emerge with fragmented memories, an inability to recognize loved ones, and lasting psychological scars. But this was just one of the program's many tactics. Across the US, the CIA dosed individuals with LSD, a drug they believed could be a gateway to manipulating the human mind. Operatives covertly infiltrated bars, spiking drinks to observe how people reacted. They called it Operation Midnight Climax, and the disturbing truth? It was conducted in secret brothels under the watch of hired sex workers. At first, the experiment seemed like a bizarre cocktail of chaos and pseudoscience, but then something strange began happening. The researchers started noticing patterns, clues that hinted at the potential for total psychological breakdown or even manipulation. What did they discover? Could they really control someone's actions or erase memories? The CIA seemed to think they were close to answers, but no one could predict the horrifying twist that was about to surface. One name would become forever tied to the dark legacy of MKUltra, Frank Olsen. A biochemist working for the US Army, Olsen was deeply involved in the program's earliest phases. He was privy to classified experiments involving LSD and biological warfare. But by November 1953, Olsen's colleagues noticed something strange. He seemed on edge, paranoid, as if he were hiding something. Just days later, during a CIA retreat, Olsen was secretly dosed with LSD by his own co-workers. His reaction was immediate and severe. He spiraled into a state of confusion and despair. A week later, Olsen fell to his death from the 13th floor of a New York City hotel. Official reports called it a suicide, claiming he'd been struggling with his mental health. But as Olsen's family began asking questions, the story unraveled. How could a man entrusted with the government's most sensitive secrets suddenly take his own life? Why had the CIA been monitoring him so closely in the days leading up to his death? And what about the strange bruises found on his body during an independent autopsy decades later? The CIA insisted Olsen's death was a tragic accident, but to this day many believe he was silenced, an expendable pawn in a much larger game. But if the CIA could go this far to protect its secrets, what else were they hiding? The full truth about MKUltra was about to come crashing into the public eye, and it would be even darker than anyone imagined. For years, MKUltra operated in the shadows, shielded by secrecy and bolstered by a web of plausible deniability. But in the mid-1970s, cracks in the armor began to show. A series of whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and congressional inquiries would peel back the layers of deceit surrounding the CIA's mind control experiments. It all began with the Church Committee, a congressional investigation led by Senator Frank Church. The committee sought to uncover abuses of power by U.S. intelligence agencies, including surveillance and unauthorized experiments on American citizens. As hearings began, documents surfaced revealing MKUltra's existence. The CIA's response? Damage control. In a deliberate move, they had already destroyed most of the program's files. Only a few survived, a series of financial records mistakenly overlooked during the purge. These remnants exposed horrifying details about the experiments but left many questions unanswered. One of the most shocking revelations was the CIA's systematic targeting of vulnerable individuals, including the mentally ill, prisoners, and even unsuspecting civilians. Testimonies from survivors painted a grim picture: lives ruined, minds shattered, and no accountability. The question now was, how deep did the rabbit hole go? And could anyone be held responsible? As the investigation continued, it became clear that the program's true scale might never be fully understood. But just when the public thought they had seen it all, an even darker truth emerged, one that implicated not just rogue scientists, but the highest levels of government. To this day, the true extent of MKUltra's horrors remains shrouded in mystery. The program officially ended in 1973, but by then, its impact had already left scars that would last for generations. Victims of the experiments, those who survived, continue to seek justice. Lawsuits against the government have yielded mixed results. While some families, like that of Frank Olsen, have received financial settlements, these victories feel hollow compared to the damage inflicted. Olsen's son, Eric, has spent decades fighting for answers, convinced that his father was murdered to protect CIA secrets. But perhaps the most haunting legacy of MKUltra is its influence on public trust. The program, once dismissed as a conspiracy theory, became proof that governments are capable of far more than most people dare to imagine. What makes this story even more chilling is what we don't know. How many records were destroyed? How many lives were affected? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, could similar experiments still be happening today, hidden under a different name? MKUltra may have officially ended, but its shadow lingers on the victims it left behind, on the institutions it corrupted, and in the questions it forces us to ask about the ethics of power. So, the next time you hear whispers of government conspiracies, ask yourself, is it paranoia, or is it history repeating itself? The story of MKUltra is a stark reminder of the lengths to which those in power will go to maintain control. It challenges us to remain vigilant, to question authority, and to seek the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Because in the end, the only way to prevent history from repeating itself is to confront it head-on.